As you can see from the title, this video is going to be dealing with long-run behavior of rational functions. There is a class notes and example sheet to go with this video. So that would probably be the easiest way to take notes on it. I'd like to start with a classic example of a rational function. And this has to do with average cost for a pharmacy company. If they want to produce a drug, it's of course going to cost money. And so suppose the total cost of producing a certain number of grams of a prescription drug is given by this linear function, where the output is the total cost and the input is Q grams. As you look at this formula, you can see it's going to cost quite a bit of money. This is $4 million here, plus $3,500 times Q. And hopefully this makes sense. It does take a lot of money up front to do the research and development and have the people on staff to be able to produce a drug. So there's a lot of upfront costs. That's what the 4 million is, right? And then 3,500 would be how much it's costing kind of to produce the drug with the materials and equipment that you have. While drug companies do care about the total cost, they perhaps care even more about the average cost of producing the drug. Pharmaceutical companies always get a patent for any drug that they produce so that they have the total rights to be the only ones producing that particular drug for about 7 years. And that allows them to kind of absorb these upfront costs for producing the drug. So if we look at the average cost of producing Q grams, it would be given by this function where we take the total cost divided by what? Pause the video for a moment and see if you can figure out what would go in the denominator of our average cost function. We'll see if this is what you said. Yes, we would want to divide our total cost, right, by Q, the number of grams that we actually produce, right? We can get the total cost divided by the number. That would give us how many dollars we're spending per gram. Okay, be dollars over grams. So this would be our actual formula. And this is our first look at what we would call a rational function. Let's take a quick look at the graph before we proceed. So as you're looking at the graph, certainly one major feature of it is that it's decreasing, right? It's going down, that as we produce more and more of a drug, the average cost is going down, right? If we only produce, say, 1 gram of the drug, it's going to cost a whole lot of money because it's going to basically be 4 million plus the 3,500 all divided by 1, right? But as we produce more of the drug, this high cost gets spread out over more and more grams, which brings down the average cost. So we said that average cost function was an example of a rational function. And the reason it was a rational function is that it was the ratio of 2 polynomials. So the first sentence is maybe a less formal definition, maybe more of an English definition, while the second definition would be more of a mathematical definition, right? We can say that r of x equal to p of x over q of x is a rational function if both p and q are polynomials. And one more thing, q cannot be 0, right? You're never allowed to divide by 0. So as we take a look down below here, see if you think if either of these two functions is a rational function. Pause the video and give these a shot. Okay, let's see if what you said about number 1 is correct. The denominator of number 1 looks pretty good. Certainly if we multiplied these two binomials together, we would get a polynomial. But as we look at the top, we can see that this square root of 7 is a problem, right? We said we have to have 2 polynomials, and this square root of x right here, not square root of 7, but the square root of x is x to the 1/2, and that would make the top part not a polynomial. So f of x is not a rational function because we do actually have to have polynomials on both the top and the bottom. That's kind of a picky piece of this. All right, now when you look at number 2, you might also think that this one is not a polynomial, but it actually turns out that it is. Even though this 1 plus makes it look like we wouldn't have a fraction of 2 polynomials, we can get a common denominator and actually add these 2 fractions. So when we do get our common denominator, of course the 1 is just x minus 2 over x minus 2. And then when we add the 7 over x minus 2, we get x plus 5 over x minus 2. And that is a ratio of 2 polynomials. Let's come back to our average cost function that we had here. And we're interested in what exactly happens to the average cost as the quantity of the drug produced increases. As that company keeps making more and more of the drug, what's happening to that average cost? What we can do is use a similar analysis to what we were doing with polynomials. Since we have a polynomial on top and a polynomial on the bottom, we can look at the long-run behavior of each polynomial separately, and that should give us a good clue as to what's happening to the rational function. As the input q approaches infinity, our rational function a of q is going to approach the 3500 times q on top, right? Because that's the leading term, highest degree term. And on the bottom, we only have one term to deal with anyway, so it would just be q. And of course, 3500 q over q is equal to, that's right, 3500. So we're basically saying that as our input, the q, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, our output is going to be approaching 3500. Let's take a look at the graph and see if that is what happened. It appears that our analysis was pretty accurate, right? Here's that horizontal line, 3500, and indeed our graph is getting closer and closer and closer to those values. And so what we have here is what is called a horizontal asymptote. Okay, just like we've seen vertical asymptotes before, like we actually have one here at 0, where the graph is getting closer and closer to the y-axis here. Well, we also have a horizontal one, and horizontal asymptotes are usually analyzed by looking at large values of x, what's happening to the long-run behavior of a function as x approaches infinity. So take the example that we just did and try to apply that same logic to this problem and see if you come up with another horizontal asymptote. Pause the video and give that a try. All right, thanks for doing that. See if this is what you got. Yes, so we are going to have a horizontal asymptote at -3/2, right? Because we'll end up with long-run behavior of -3x squared over 2x squared, which simplifies to -3x. So as x approaches plus or minus infinity, the y should be approaching -3/2. Let's see if that's what the graph shows us. Indeed it is. Here is our line, y equals -3/2, and you can see as x heads towards positive infinity or as x heads toward negative infinity, our y values are approaching that line. This is a good example of showing that it is possible to actually cross or intersect a horizontal asymptote. That is not unusual. What would be unusual is if we were seeing it cross or intersected a lot for larger values of x, right? But that's what our analysis is. It's not saying anything about what can happen for small values of x. So it's not like a vertical asymptote. You may recall with tangent graphs and things like that, vertical asymptotes would have no points on them, right? The graph would not intersect them, but with horizontal asymptotes, that is possible. This example is a little different, but go ahead and pause the video to see if you can figure out what the basic long-run behavior for g of x is looking like, and then we can talk about whether that produces a horizontal asymptote or not. Okay, is this what you got? So this time we end up with the negative 4x on top and x squared on the bottom. And when we simplify that, we just get the power function negative 4 over x. Right? This is actually a power function with a negative 1 for its exponent. So what does that mean is happening to our graph here as x approaches plus or minus infinity? Well, one way we can look at it is, do we know what the graph of negative 4x and negative 1 would be? And hopefully from previous lessons, we've learned basically what this power function's graph would look like. I'll graph it over here on the side. So y equals x to the negative 1 would normally be that hyperbola, right? That hyperbola that we get with just 1 over x, right? But now with that negative 4, that's going to flip it. So we're looking at this. But it actually doesn't really matter. That negative 4 is not playing as big a role here, because whether we're looking at the green graph or the blue graph, as x approaches plus or minus infinity, the y values are approaching 0. Okay? And so the other way to look at this is to see that as x gets really big in this denominator, like you're talking about a million or a billion or a much bigger number, this fraction is essentially getting really tiny. Now, it's a tiny negative fraction as x is heading towards positive infinity. It'd be a tiny positive fraction as x is heading towards negative infinity, but it doesn't really matter because it's all going to 0, right, from either side. So that's what we have, and that does mean that we end up with a horizontal asymptote of y equals 0, right? Let me write that here. So because the graph of negative 4 over x has a horizontal asymptote of y equals 0, so will the graph of this rational function. And indeed, we see this happening here in our graph. Right. Once again, you can see that the graph actually can cross the horizontal asymptote before it heads back up there. All right, well, this third example in the box yields yet another result that can happen when we do long-term behavior rational functions. So go ahead and figure out what you think h of x is going to approximate as x gets really large. And then we can talk about whether we have a horizontal asymptote or not. So pause the video and do that. Okay, is this what you got? All right, so same kind of analysis. By the way, you might have noticed that h of x is just the reciprocal of g of x. So this time we end up with x over negative 4, which that simplifies, or that we can write that to look like a power function of negative 1/4 x, right? And we know what negative 1/4 x looks like, right? That's just going to be a line that has a negative slope going down ever so gradually. And so it doesn't look like our function is heading towards any one number. In fact, as x approaches, let's see, we might have to split this up. So as x approaches positive infinity, do that first, y is approaching negative infinity, right? And as x approaches negative infinity, it appears that y is approaching positive infinity. So we have no horizontal asymptote. Indeed, we can see here in the graph that there is not a horizontal asymptote. Now, that you might be wondering, so is there an asymptote? Well, we'll take a look at that a little later, but certainly not a horizontal asymptote. So if you go back and look at those three examples, you will notice that every time we were able to have our rational function resemble that of some power function. This would be, of course, for large values of x. Because what we're doing, right, is as x approaches plus or minus infinity, we're going to have y go towards the leading term of p, that polynomial, over the leading term of polynomial q. And that will naturally simplify to some power function that can be written as a times x to a constant exponent. In the first example, we saw that we ended up with just a number, right? So that's what this is referring to, that if b equals 0. Well, we just got a number, And that would mean that r does have a horizontal asymptote, right? Because a times x to the 0 is just going to be a, so our horizontal asymptote will be y equals a. All right, the second example was where we ended up with a negative exponent on our power function, right? I think we had x to the negative 1. So when that happens, r has a horizontal asymptote of just y equals 0. It'll always be y equals 0 when you're with a negative, because remember, something like x to the negative b right here is just going to be 1 over x to the b, and when your denominator is getting really big, right, for large values of x, you're heading to 0, no matter what your k is, right, whether that's a 1 or a negative 1 or anything. All right, and then the final example that we have here is if you end up with a number that's positive, that's greater than 0. What we saw there was that r does not have a horizontal asymptote, right? So we ended up with an example like this one where y equal negative 1/4 x, and so the graph is essentially just going to look like this line for large values of x. I will mention, it's possible you could end up with, a power function like negative 1/4 x squared. Then your graph would essentially look like, a parabola going down on both ends for large values of x. I just want to quickly revisit this last example we saw where our long-run behavior ended up being that line for large values of x, this line here, negative 1/4 x. You might think that that is like an asymptote for this graph, what we might call an oblique asymptote. Here's the spelling on that, oblique. Oblique would just mean it's neither horizontal nor vertical. It's kind of slanted. But let's take a look at the actual graph, two graphs here. We can see that the line negative 1/4 x here in red, it doesn't quite fit to be the asymptote. It looks a little low, right? That it should be up a little higher. And indeed, it's really not the actual oblique asymptote. It is an approximation of it, okay? And that's kind of, we were saying that h of x is approximately going to equal this graph here as x heads towards infinity or negative infinity. And if we blew the graph out, it would essentially look like it is the asymptote. I'm going to show you a slide of what you can do if you actually did want to see the oblique asymptote, but I'm not going to go through the details of it just because of trying to keep this video from going too long. Plus, we will be satisfied with an approximation of the asymptote for our purposes. So if you were to actually do the long division of taking negative 4x plus 5 and dividing it into x squared minus 2x plus 1, something that I think you did last year in Algebra 2, you would end up with a quotient or an answer of negative 1/4 x plus 3 over 16 with a remainder of 1 over 16. And you could rewrite this rational expression as negative 1/4 x plus 3/16. That's our quotient plus our remainder over our divisor. And for large values of x, this fraction right here just goes to 0. So we're left with negative 1/4 x plus 3/16, that linear function. By the way, I'm just drawing parallels to how we would do long division back in 3rd grade with numbers. We're just doing the same thing over here with the variable expressions. So if we graph that line, the negative 1/4 x plus 3/16, you'll see it does actually fit quite a bit better. But I will just say we'll be fine with just the approximation after we do our long-run behavior because it's close enough. Once you blow it out, blow the graph out to large values of x, you really can't see much of a difference between this line and the approximate line. All right, so we've covered the first part of rational functions. You might need to use some of this stuff on future explorations as well as perhaps some homework.